Did you know that you're most likely an alien on this planet? Some scientists believe that the seeds of life may have been planted here by an asteroid or a comet, carrying the building blocks of life across the vast expanse of space. This tantalizing idea raises the possibility that life on Earth might not be entirely earthly at all. Perhaps, in a way, we are all aliens. But whether life began here or was delivered from the stars, every living thing on our planet shares a remarkable connection. Hidden deep within our cells is the evidence of a single ancestor, an organism that lived billions of years ago and gave rise to all forms of life on Earth. Could we really be aliens? And what bizarre creatures came after the first life on Earth appeared? Imagine being able to see the Earth around 4.5 billion years ago as a fiery, molten rock, being constantly bombarded by asteroids and comets. The early Earth was an extremely hostile place. But from all this chaos, something seemingly rare and extraordinary was about to happen. Life was about to begin. Scientists believe that life got its start on Earth around 3.5 to 4.5 billion years ago. The Earth was in a period called the Hadean era, aptly named because the planet was full of active volcanoes and the atmosphere was toxic. It would be hard to imagine any living thing being able to survive here. The early solar system itself was a chaotic and unforgiving place. Space rocks of all different sizes left over from the formation of the Sun came together to form a disk around the star. Gravity pulled these chunks of rocks together, which sometimes ended in destruction, or they came together to create larger objects, like the planets and moons in our solar system. Our own moon was formed the same way. During the Hadean era, Earth was still a molten, turbulent world, constantly bombarded by space debris. But then, the most significant collision in Earth's history occurred. A Mars-sized protoplanet named Theia crashed into the young Earth with an unimaginable force. The impact was so powerful that it sent vast amounts of Earth's mantle and crust into space, forming a ring of debris around the planet. Over time, the debris cloud, rich in Earth's materials, formed a moon. Rock samples collected during the Apollo missions proved that the moon was made of the same materials as Earth, and split lunar boulders were evidence of huge collisions. But this cataclysmic event didn't just create the moon, it also altered the Earth in a few important ways. The collision tilted Earth's axis, resulting in different weather seasons. Its gravitational pull began to stabilize Earth's rotation, preventing wild orbital swings, which would have made the planet much less hospitable for life. The moon also started to influence the tides, creating a rhythmic ebb and flow in the oceans, which may have played a crucial role in the development of early life. All this activity during the time of the young Earth set the stage for the first spark of life. Large asteroid impacts likely made the atmosphere rich with carbon monoxide, which may have fueled early biological metabolism and played a key role in the origin of life. Not only did asteroid and comet impacts create an atmosphere, but they brought with them complex organic molecules. The panspermia hypothesis is the idea that life on Earth, or the basic building blocks of life, may have originated from microorganisms or chemical precursors of life that came from outer space, maybe even beyond our solar system, and was delivered by asteroids, comets, meteorites, or came from cosmic dust. If it's true, then we could all call ourselves aliens from another world. While that sounds like science fiction, we now know this is a possibility. Evidence of asteroids carrying around the building blocks of life came from NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission. They wanted to grab a sample from a huge asteroid floating in space named Bennu. When scientists studied the rocks and dust from the returned sample, They found it abundant in water, rich in carbon, nitrogen, and all the organic compounds that are essential components for life as we know it. Although not the very first form of life, the last universal common ancestor, or LUCA for short, is estimated to have lived around 4.2 billion years ago, just a few hundred million years after the Earth formed. This means LUCA existed at a time when Earth was still a very hostile place, with extreme volcanic activity and a toxic atmosphere. LUCA was probably a single-celled organism, similar to modern bacteria or archaea. Despite being simple, it had some complex molecular machinery, including the ability to replicate its DNA and produce proteins. LUCA used the same genetic code that all living organisms use today. This code is like a language that cells use to read DNA and build proteins, and it's been preserved through billions of years of evolution. All living things on Earth are connected to this last universal common ancestor. From the tiniest bacteria, the largest blue whales, and yes, even humans. Earth's harsh early conditions didn't matter to this organism. Scientists believe LUCA lived in extreme environments, possibly near hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, where superheated water rich in minerals could have provided the energy and nutrients necessary for life. The hydrovent deep in the seas and oceans is where chemical evolution occurred. Imagine a primordial soup, a mixture of water, gases and minerals, all swirling together in the ancient oceans. Lightning strikes, volcanic eruptions, and ultraviolet radiation from the young sun provided the energy needed to kick-start chemical reactions. Some chemical reactions that spark life took place in hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. These vents spew hot, mineral-rich water, providing a perfect environment for chemical reactions. Hydrothermal vents are like underwater volcanoes. The hot water they release contains chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, which microbes can use for energy. This process is known as chemosynthesis, and it could have been a crucial step in the development of early life. Life could also have begun in shallow, sunlit ponds or tidal pools. Here, the constant wetting and drying cycles could have concentrated organic molecules, driving the chemical reactions needed to form life. Imagine a small pond that dries up in the sun, leaving behind a thick, gooey mixture of organic molecules. When it rains, the pond fills up again, and new reactions take place. Over time, these cycles could have led to the formation of life. So, what were these first life forms like? They were incredibly simple, nothing more than tiny, single-celled organisms. These ancient microbes, known as prokaryotes, lacked a nucleus and other complex structures found in modern cells. They thrived in the harsh conditions of early Earth, using chemical reactions to produce energy and grow. Prokaryotes are like microscopic survival machines. They can live in extreme environments, from boiling hot springs to the cold, deep underground. These early life forms were incredibly resilient, and their simple structure allowed them to adapt and evolve over time. Stromatolite literally means layered rock, and are structures created by the growth of cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae. Stromatolites are called Earth's oldest living life forms. These microorganisms form colonies and trap sediment with their sticky filaments, creating layered, mound-like formations. Cyanobacteria within stromatolites performed photosynthesis, converting sunlight into energy and releasing oxygen as a byproduct. This process was crucial in transforming Earth's atmosphere and making it habitable for more complex life forms. Archaea are single-celled microorganisms that are known for their ability to thrive in extreme environments, such as hot springs, salty lakes, and deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Some can survive in temperatures above the boiling point of water. while others can live in a highly acidic or alkaline conditions. Their ability to adapt to extreme environments suggests that they might have been among the first life forms to colonize the early Earth. These prokaryotes dominated the early Earth, but a significant leap in complexity came with the emergence of eukaryotes about 1.5 billion years ago. Eukaryotic cells are more complex than prokaryotic cells, with a nucleus that houses genetic material and specialized organelles that perform various functions. The origin of eukaryotes is linked to a process called endosymbiosis, which happens when a larger prokaryotic cell engulfs smaller prokaryotic cells and then become symbiotic partners. Over time, these engulfed cells evolve into organelles like mitochondria and chloroplasts. Mitochondria, often referred to as the powerhouses of the cell, produce energy through cellular respiration. Chloroplasts, found in plants and algae, enable photosynthesis. This endosymbiotic theory is supported by the fact that mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own DNA, which is similar to the DNA of certain bacteria. Around 1.6 billion years ago, the first multicellular organisms began to appear. One of the earliest known examples is Gripania, a genus of algae that lived in shallow seas. Gripania was a simple, ribbon-like organism, but its appearance marked a significant step in the evolution of life. Multicellularity allowed organisms to grow larger and develop specialized cells for different functions. This increased complexity paved the way for the diverse array of life forms that would follow. Acritarchs are another group of early life forms that appeared around 1.5 billion years ago. These microscopic, single-celled organisms are thought to be among the earliest eukaryotes. Acritarchs had a tough outer shell, which likely provided protection and helped them survive in harsh environments. Fossil evidence of acritarchs comes from ancient rock formations around the world. These fossils show a wide variety of shapes and sizes, indicating that acritarchs were a diverse group. Around 1.2 billion years ago, red algae, or Rhodophyta, emerged as some of the earliest photosynthetic eukaryotes. Red algae are still around today and are commonly found in marine environments. Red algae have a unique pigment called psychoerythrin, which gives them their red color and allows them to absorb light efficiently for photosynthesis. This adaptation enabled red algae to thrive in deeper waters where light is limited. Fast forward to about 635 million years ago, and we enter the Ediacaran period. This period is characterized by the appearance of a group of early multicellular organisms that lived in marine environments. The Ediacaran biota included a variety of strange and fascinating life forms, some of which have no modern counterparts. One very important example is this flat, round creature with segments named Dickinsonia, which lived around 558 million years ago on the ancient seabeds. It was well adapted to life on the sea floor, where it fed by absorbing nutrients from the microbial mats it lived on, and grew up to 4.5 feet long. It's the oldest known animal on Earth. It existed long before the Cambrian explosion, when most major animals started to appear. The new Earth was a hellish place during this time. The flow of the mantle beneath the crust caused the movement of large plates of rock on the planet's surface. Collisions of these plates created huge mountains and volcanoes that continually erupted, shooting out huge amounts of lava and gases, and the reefs were created in the oceans. At this time, the protoplanet barely had an atmosphere, but as the planet cooled, gravity captured those gases from the volcanoes. Water was deposited on Earth by collisions of many comets and asteroids. One other key thing for life to emerge on our planet, aside from water, is where it lies from its star, the Sun. Earth sits in what's called the Goldilocks zone, which puts it close enough to the Sun to allow liquid water to exist on the Earth's surface. Before life even began or had a chance on Earth, radiation from our star was the primary source of energy on our planet, just as it is today. The early Earth had very little oxygen, if any at all, and it's theorized that solar energy provided the jump start that transformed simple organic molecules into more complex ones, transforming them into the building blocks of biology and life. Life likely developed in undersea alkaline vents and was probably based on ribonucleic acid, a nucleic acid which is present in all living cells rather than deoxyribonucleic acid, an organic chemical containing genetic information and instructions for protein synthesis. At some point during this time, a common ancestor gave rise to two main groups of life, bacteria and archaea, although exactly how this happened is still uncertain. For billions of years, tiny microbes and single-celled organisms evolved and began feeding on methane around 3.6 billion years ago. And at the 3 billion year mark, evidence of viruses were found. However, some argue that viruses could be as old as life itself. Sometime during Earth's early history, the planet took a turn towards habitability when a group of microbes known as cyanobacteria evolved with the ability to turn light and water into energy and released oxygen in the process. Dissolved oxygen caused iron in the oceans to rust and sink to the sea floor, which formed striking red-banded iron formations. But between 2.4 and 2.1 billion years ago, something incredibly remarkable and disastrous took place in this early cycle of life. The poisonous waste produced by these evolved photosynthetic cyanobacteria, oxygen, built up in the atmosphere, causing anaerobic bacteria to die off, leading to the Earth's first mass extinction, which some call the Great Oxidation Event. How can oxygen be toxic, you might be asking? Oxygen became toxic because of the high levels and overwhelmed the natural antioxidant defense system of any living microbe or bacteria at the time. Basically, these cyanobacteria in the form of algae ate themselves to death and caused a global extinction. But the worst was about to come. Around 2.3 billion years ago, the Earth froze over as the possible result of the Great Oxidation Event, and volcanic activity on the planet slowed down. Over time, the ice melted, which resulted in more oxygen being indirectly released into the atmosphere. This gave way to the Neoproterozoic era, where protozoans such as Paramecium, amoebas, and Melanocerilium evolved. The first animal cells were different from plants, and these cells began feeding on plants and became the first herbivores. But during this era, the Earth froze again at least 2 more times, which stunted evolutionary development. However, life finds a way, and during this time, fungi, worms, and other small bilaterally symmetrical animals survived and evolved. Fast forward to the Paleozoic era. Complex life forms began to develop, including fish, arthropods, mollusks, and echinoderms. Plants started to show up on the surface of the Earth, and air-breathing animals started to walk, crawl, and slither on land. Meanwhile, sharks, horseshoe crabs, and starfish began to fill the oceans. At the beginning of the Devonian period, insects started to take form, and ferns were the common land plant. A prehistoric, jawless fish with bony armor called the cephalaspis, and crabs, large sharks, hagfish, and ratfish evolved. This gave way to the Carboniferous period, where the climate on Earth was thought to be tropical, with little change during the seasons, and gave rise to a new wave of strange creatures. Plants covered the Earth during this time, and the organic deposits of plant debris formed the world's first coal deposits, which humans are still burning today. The growth of these forests increased oxygen levels in the atmosphere, which peaked to around 35% compared to the 21% it is today. This alone might explain the size of the giant creepy crawlies that emerged. Some animals and insects may have developed in water and grew bigger as a way to protect themselves against the high levels of oxygen at the time. One of those were giant insects called Meganeuropsis, which closely resemble modern-day dragonflies, had wingspans of 63 to 68 centimeters, and could be seen in the skies during this period. One incredibly detailed fossil of a huge dragonfly that died 320 million years ago was discovered to have a wingspan of 0.75 meters. Deadly poisonous centipedes, 2 meters long, crawled around with mammoth cockroaches and scorpions as big as 1 meter long. Amphibians began to diversify, and reptiles evolved into forms much like modern-day lizards with a backbone, allowing them to live and move on land. These amphibians were also huge, and some species were predatory, resembling modern-day crocodiles, armed with sharp teeth and reaching lengths of almost 6 meters long. And like modern-day crocodiles and alligators, some evolved to have a thicker, scaly skin, which solved the problem of their bodies drying out if they were out of the water too long. And for the first time, amphibians evolved to lay amniotic or air-breathing eggs on land. And that changed everything, since these animals could now live out of and away from water sources. For those who like to swim or scuba dive, you'll be glad that Dunkleosteus is now extinct. The sheer size of this huge carnivore would be enough to scare you alone. It grew almost 9 meters long and weighed close to 4,000 kilograms full grown. Dunkleosteus was an armored fish, an apex predator that was capable of taking down just about anything it could get in its jaws. The interesting thing about the heavily armored, tank-like Dunkleosteus is that it was toothless. Instead of teeth, its armored head and jaw plates formed massive self-sharpening blades that could rip and tear through anything. And with a bite force of 21,000 pounds per square inch, that's on par with giant crocodiles, this scary creature of the depths could chomp straight through bone. Furthermore, the jaws of the Dunkleosteus could rapidly open and close very fast, creating a suction action that would suck prey right into their jaws. And this fish didn't care what got in its way, because everything was lunch. There's even fossil evidence showing they tried to eat each other. It would be no problem for a fish this size to quickly make a meal of a human. Lucky for us, the Dunkleosteus went extinct along with 75% of the planet's species from a combination of 8 to 10 extinction events over 20 million years called the Late Devonian Extinction. The Carboniferous period gave way to the Permian period that began approximately 300 million years ago, just 50 million years before the dinosaurs. All the continents during this period existed as one large landmass called Pangaea. The first large plant-eating and meat-eating animals evolved during this time. Some of these creatures could be mistaken for dinosaurs, but they were actually more closely related to mammals and reptiles. One of these bizarre creatures was Diplocerapsis. It looked a little like a salamander that averaged around 1 meter long, but its head was shaped like a boomerang. Another new reptile on the planet was the iconic Dimetrodon, which grew to about 5 meters long and had a large sail on its back, which is likely used to regulate its body temperature. During the Permian period, mammals were increasing in dominance. The biggest of these were creatures classified as Gorgonopsians, which were a class of giant, bear-like animals that all had different teeth that were specialized for different functions. These animals could be either herbivores or carnivores and vary in size from less than a kilogram to more than a ton. One group of these creatures were known as cynodonts. Their name means dog-like teeth, and these animals had social behavior, and there is some fossil evidence that shows they hunted in packs. In the oceans, fish with true bony skeletons evolved. Sharks and rays flourished, as well as sponges and coral. On land, insects evolved with adapted mouthparts that allowed them to pierce and suck. But around 252 million years ago, the Permian era came to an abrupt end by a cataclysmic event that caused mass extinction. In 2001, scientists made a chilling discovery. A massive comet or asteroid, similar to the one that put an end to the dinosaurs, wiped out the giant reptile predecessors 200 million years earlier. But how did scientists come to this conclusion? Molecules of helium and argon gas were found locked in carbon in high proportions that could have only come from space. It's estimated that the asteroid or comet was between 6 and 12 kilometers wide in diameter. Researchers say the strike would have released the energy 1 million times greater than the biggest earthquake of the last century. Aside from this discovery, there's some evidence that current-day Siberia and China experienced volcanic eruptions on an unimaginably massive scale. and those eruptions created dust and ash clouds that blocked out sunlight. Not only that, but over 1 million years, 3 million cubic kilometers of lava poured out of the ground, covering the entire planet in a layer 10 meters thick. The asteroid impact, combined with volcanic activity, was the proverbial blast from a double-barreled shotgun. The Earth was once again a very unhappy place. The combination of these two events resulted in what's called the Great Dying. 90% of all marine animals and 70% of all land animals that were alive during this time perished. It would seem like this would be the final chapter in the evolution of life on Earth, and it would be seemingly wiped out completely. But a new age would begin after this, and the age of the dinosaurs would begin. The extinction event of the Permian-Triassic era 252 million years ago marked the beginning of the Mesozoic era of the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous period, which lasted 186 million years. During the Triassic era, there was one vast supercontinent called Pangaea, which was mostly vast deserts with a hot and dry climate, surrounded by a huge ocean called Panthalassa. Dinosaurs would begin to evolve during the mid to late Triassic period. When we talk about dinosaurs, we immediately imagine towering and thundering animals like Tyrannosaurus rex. But new research shows that the dinosaurs and their pterosaur relatives evolved from extremely small ancestors. Proof of this theory was discovered in Madagascar, when a newly discovered reptile species was found. Named Congonophone kelly, or tiny bug slayer, it lived some 237 million years ago and stood just 10 centimeters tall. It's one of the first small animals found from the root of the Ornithodora family tree and is an important discovery. The miniaturization event in which it lived served as a survival strategy for early ornithodorans, and where on its teeth showed the tiny creature preyed on insects. This eliminated the need for them to compete with their relatives for meat. Furthermore, researchers of this tiny dinosaur relative showed that feathers and other fuzzy skin coverings found on the later true dinosaurs and pterosaurs likely originated to protect the tiny dino ancestors from the extreme climate of the mid to late Triassic period when the first dinosaurs evolved. The Triassic marked the rise of the reptiles, mainly the archosaurs or ruling lizards, and therapsids or mammal-like reptiles. For reasons unknown, the archosaurs had an evolutionary edge, muscling out their mammal-like cousins and evolving by the mid to late Triassic into the first true dinosaurs, such as Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus. Dinosaurs were divided into two main branches: Saurischian, which means lizard-hipped, and Ornithischian, or bird-hipped dinosaurs. Eoraptor was at the root of the Saurischian family tree. It was only 91 centimeters long and weighed about 11 kilograms. It had long legs that allowed it to run fast, and its front paws had sharp claws that helped it to grab prey. Herrerasaurus was more advanced in evolution than the Eoraptor because it had a joint in its lower jaw. It had a large skull, and its jaws were armed with the sharp teeth of a carnivore. It averaged in length from 3 to 6 meters and had 5 fingers on each paw with blunt claws. Styracosaurus was another early true dinosaur that was about 2 meters long with a large skull as long as its femur, and there were 13 to 14 sharp teeth in its upper and lower jaws. It has short front paws with 5 fingers. It had long hind legs that allowed it to run fast. Styracosaurus was a predator that weighed about 30 kilograms, and although this dinosaur was kind of small, it probably had no trouble dealing with larger prey. Eoraptor, Herrerasaurus, and Styracosaurus are prime examples of the rapid evolution of predatory dinosaurs 225 million years ago. But at the same time, the first plant-eating dinosaurs appeared in the fossil record. Pisanosaurus was a 1-meter dinosaur that weighed 2 to 9 kilograms and had closely spaced teeth forming a continuous edge for grinding plant matter. By the late Triassic period, there were at least 15 different dinosaurs. During the Jurassic period, Earth's climate changed from hot and dry to a much more humid and subtropical climate. Forests of ferns, cycads, and conifers began to cover the planet, and the air was warm, moist, with tropical breezes. During the beginning of this period, the breakup of the supercontinent Pangaea continued and accelerated. Laurasia, the northern half of the continent, broke up into North America and Eurasia. The southern half, called Gondwana, began to break up during the mid-Jurassic. The eastern parts, Antarctica, Madagascar, India and Australia, split off from the western half of Africa and South America. New oceans flooded the spaces in between. Huge mountains rose on the seafloor and pushed sea levels higher onto the continents. It was all this water that created the humid and subtropical climate. Deserts began to turn green. Palm tree-like cycads and conifer trees such as the araucaria and pine were abundant. The oceans became full of diverse and abundant life, and at the top of the ocean food chain were the marine reptiles. The plesiosaurs with their long necks and paddle-finned flippers. Among them were giant marine crocodiles, sharks and rays, ichthyosaurs, squid-like cephalopods, coil-shelled ammonites. Sponges, snails and mollusks were abundant in the ancient oceans. Coral reefs grew and expanded quickly in the warm waters, and microscopic plankton increased rapidly to the point that they may have turned parts of the ocean red. The earliest known bird, Archaeopteryx, took to the skies in the late Jurassic, likely evolved from an early Coelosaurian dinosaur. Archaeopteryx had to compete for airspace with pterosaurs, flying reptiles that had been buzzing the skies since the late Triassic. Meanwhile, insects such as leafhoppers and beetles were abundant, as many of Earth's earliest mammals scurried around the feet of dinosaurs. It was at this time that the dinosaurs began making their mark in a huge way. Literally. Small quadrupedal plant-eating dinosaurs gradually evolved into multi-ton giants. The plant-eating sauropod named Brachiosaurus was 16 meters tall and stretched out to around 26 meters long and could weigh as much as 25 tons. Another herbivorous sauropod giant named Diplodocus was 27 meters long and weighed between 30 to 50 tons. The sheer size of these dinosaur giants may have stopped the attacks of a bulky meat-eating dinosaur that walked on two powerful legs who also lived during this time, the ominous Allosaurus. This huge carnivore ranged in size from 7 to 12 meters long, weighed nearly 2 tons, and had 16 sharp teeth in its upper and lower jaw. And like many predatory dinosaurs of the Mesozoic era, Allosaurus constantly grew, shed, and replaced its 3 to 4 inch teeth. And this dinosaur was fast. Models suggest that Allosaurus could run up to 34 kilometers per hour. Fossil evidence shows that Allosaurus preyed on Stegosaurus, and the plant-eating dinosaur fought back, punching holes right through Allosaurus's bones with its spiky clubbed tail. It could be why Stegosaurus had a pretty long run and survived all the way up to the late Cretaceous. But there were new predators that would come along that were as equally terrifying as the Allosaurus. The North American Tyrannosaurus rex could grow 12.5 meters long and weighed up to 8 to 10 tons, although now some say it might have weighed half of these estimates. But the T-Rex wasn't alone in the meat-eating dinosaur category. In fact, it was either outclassed or equal to two other sharp-toothed monsters. The South American Gigantosauros, which had the same type of build and weighed 9 tons, and the 10-ton Northern African Spinosaurus. Still, the T-Rex was a mean and nasty predator, if not downright unhygienic. Experts believe that shards of rotten bacteria-laden meat was constantly lodged in its closely packed teeth, which gave the animal a septic bite that would eventually be fatal to its wounded prey. Of course, this process would have taken at least several days or weeks, and another T-Rex would probably reap the rewards. Scientists examining the T-Rex skull determined it had the bite force of between 1,500 to 5,000 pounds per square inch, and could take bites of flesh in the 225 kilogram range. But Tyrannosaurus rex, like Allosaurus, had problems with prey itself. It lived in the same region and time period as some armored plant-eating dinosaurs. One of the most iconic dinosaurs next to T-Rex has to be Triceratops, which means three-horned face. All Triceratops had three-horned skulls. Two massive horns were above the eye socket, and one smaller horn was over the nose. Weighing around 6.5 to 13 tons, the biggest Triceratops was 9 meters long from nose to tail. The tips of their shoulders were 3 meters off the ground. Triceratops had teeth arranged in dental batteries, and each individual tooth was stacked in a vertical column of 3 to 5 teeth. These formed rows with 36 to 40 tooth-loaded columns. This means that a single Triceratops could have 800 teeth at its disposal. It had a narrow beak and powerful jaws that allowed it to grind down tough vegetation and trees. It's one of the last non-avian dinosaurs to evolve at the end of the Cretaceous. Ankylosaurus is another of the most famous armored dinosaurs. It was the largest ankylosauride and the last of its kind. It's thought to have lived right up to the end of the Cretaceous period. The body of ankylosaurs was covered in bony plates. It had a beak and teeth and 4 horns that projected backwards from its head. Its tail ended in a club, which provided protection from predators. This would have been useful since ankylosaurs lived alongside Tyrannosaurus rex and other meat-eating predators. At some point during the middle of the Cretaceous period, dinosaurs from the ornithopod family evolved into the popular hadrosaur, or duck-billed dinosaurs. They were large, oddly shaped, low-slung vegetation eaters with tough beaks on their snouts, which were used for shredding vegetation. These dinosaurs are believed to have lived in herds and were capable of walking on 2 legs. Sauropods became even bigger by the late Cretaceous period. You may have thought that Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus were big, but by the time the late Cretaceous period rolled around, there was another dinosaur that existed, which could possibly be the biggest land animal that's ever walked the Earth. Argentinosaurus. This behemoth could be 30 to 40 meters in length and weighed between 50 and 100 tons. It was a member of the Titanosauria, the dominant group during the Cretaceous period, and was a herbivore like its earlier sauropod cousins. There was also a strange new breed of dinosaur that lived 20 million years before they all went extinct. They were called Pachycephalosaurus, or bone-headed dinosaurs, and have a bizarre-looking skull with horns on the snout and around the base of the skull. These could have been used to fight off the last of the big predators, or even to show dominance over their own species. Of course, there are more than 700 different dinosaurs that have been found so far, but not enough time to cover them all in one video. There are some dinosaurs that lived in the colder regions, when they were further south and within the Antarctic Circle during the Cretaceous. During this time, there could have been some snow and ice, and temperatures as low as -10 degrees Celsius during the 3-month-long dark winters. There were a variety of different dinosaurs living in this polar zone. In 2014, a skull section and upper and lower jaw bones were found of a miniature T-Rex called Nanoxaurus hoglandi. It's believed that many dinosaurs had feathers to protect them from the elements, and this tiny T-Rex cousin was about 6 meters long. It's now believed that all species of Tyrannosaurus rex had feathers to protect them from the elements, and Nanoxaurus was no different. Other dinosaurs like the horned and duck-billed dinosaurs, along with other small feathery predators, parrot-like oviraptors, and a small herbivore named Lielanosaura lived in the polar region as well. But their time would soon come to an end. Everyone talks about how dramatically the dinosaurs went extinct, but judging by the whopping 165 million years they survived, they might just be the most successful vertebrate animals to ever exist on planet Earth. In fact, some dinosaur relatives are still around on the planet today. Modern-day birds are, in fact, descendants of feathered dinosaurs, and you might be surprised to learn that crocodiles are the closest living relatives to birds, as they shared a common ancestor. The two groups are the only known survivors of the archosaurs. We all know what happened to the dinosaurs, and if you missed our video on the day the dinosaurs went extinct, we'll put a link in the description for you. The giant asteroid's impact into shallow waters in the Gulf of Mexico 65 million years ago was bad enough. But then an amalgam of additional disasters ensued. Rocks fell from the sky, Wildfires ignited and tsunamis inundated distant shorelines. The researchers found that the first day of the Cenozoic was peppered with cataclysms and released a new record of this day of chaos in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Their timeline was developed using high-resolution photography, microscopy, computed tomography imaging, and magnetic measurements of hundreds of feet of sedimentary rock recently recovered from Chicxulub, one of the largest impact craters on Earth. And it all began like this. Imagine you were somewhere in North America about 65 million years ago, when dinosaurs ruled the Earth, and you were looking up at the night sky. You would have probably seen what appeared to be a bright star shining off into the distance. But if you watched this peculiar light for an hour or two, the object would seem to grow in brightness, but barely move. What you would be looking at is not a star, but a huge asteroid somewhere between 11 to 80 kilometers wide on a direct intercept course with the Earth at 72,420 kilometers per hour. Hours later, the asteroid plows through Earth's atmosphere, heading straight for where the Yucatan Peninsula is today. At impacts of that speed, Earth's atmosphere acts like water. Smaller space rocks called meteors hit the atmosphere like pebbles thrown into a pond and decelerate rapidly at high altitudes, burning away from the friction of the atmosphere, while some bigger pieces of rock survive and fall to Earth. But the mountain-sized Chicxulub asteroid hits our atmosphere like throwing a boulder into a puddle. It maintained its velocity and plunged through the entire 60 miles of atmosphere in just 3 seconds. The asteroid shrieks over Central America, emitting the mother of all sonic booms that would shatter eardrums across all the continents. The dinosaurs were likely terrified and running in all directions, having no idea what was just about to happen. But if any animal was close enough to see the asteroid, they would have been instantly vaporized within minutes. In fact, except for sea turtles and crocodiles, no four-legged animal larger than 25 kilograms would survive. The mountain-sized space rock falls so quickly that the air itself cannot escape. Under intense compression, the air heats to thousands of degrees almost instantly. Before the asteroid even hits, compressed superheated air vaporizes much of the shallow sea that covers the Yucatan. Milliseconds later, the rock plunges through what's left and slams into bedrock. In that moment, a chain reaction of events occurs. The impacting asteroid exerts so much pressure on the Earth that soil and rock flow like fluids. The flowing up and down movement of the Earth is like the double splash of someone doing a cannonball in a swimming pool. The initial splash in all directions is followed by a delayed vertical splash when the cavity created by the asteroid rebounds to the surface. The first wall of Earth gouged outward at the moment of impact is more than 32 kilometers high. The impact hole nearly breaches Earth's mantle, and when the cavity rebounds to form the delayed vertical splash, the Earth rises at over 1,600 kilometers per hour to heights taller than Mount Everest. Within minutes, this mountain of debris almost entirely collapses in a series of secondary explosions, leaving behind a smaller mound called a crater's peak ring. At the same moment the asteroid strikes the Yucatan and applies its pressure to the bedrock, it converts the kinetic energy of a 7.5 billion-ton rock traveling 16 kilometers per second into searing heat in an instant. The Chicxulub impactor delivers approximately 1 septillion, 300 sextillion kilojoules of energy. More energy than 1 billion Hiroshima atomic bombs. The kinetic energy transferred by the asteroid to the soil, rock, and air excites the molecules to temperatures far hotter than the surface of the sun. The heat rips electrons from atoms, ionizing the air into an expanding fireball of plasma in excess of 10,000 degrees, turbocharged with vaporized rock that's blasted out at hypersonic speeds. The heated, rapidly expanding air and near instantaneous conversion of Earth to gas, combined with the impact shock wave itself, forms a massive blast wave of pressure expanding outward at more than 1,600 kilometers per hour. If this asteroid hit the same spot today, the blast wave would vaporize you in Texas, deafen you in New York, and blow out glass windows in Buenos Aires. The Chicxulub impactor rings Earth like a bell. Waves in Earth's crust radiate away from the impact zone at 4 kilometers per second, The waves then trigger fault-slipping earthquakes across the continents. If you were on the other side of the world, you would feel the ground shaking 30 minutes after impact. The impact triggers tsunamis as high as skyscrapers. The first of them hit Gulf coastlines within the hour. Waves ranging from 600 feet to perhaps as tall as 1,000 feet smash into what is now Mexico and the southern United States and flood tens of miles inland. The waves temporarily reverse the flow of rivers, rushing up riverbeds like 30-foot tidal bores. Tsunamis smash into the eastern coast of the United States, and 6 hours after impact, max out at 600-foot high walls of water that slam into Europe, Africa, and the Mediterranean coasts. Within 15 hours of impact, waves arrive on every coastline on the planet. Depending on local topography, the ocean sweeps away anything in its path and sucks it back to the sea when the waters finally retreat. It already sounds like Armageddon, but even more disasters are on their way. When the big rock strikes, its splash accounts for 25 trillion tons of Earth that it launches on ballistic trajectories, some at speeds that exceeds Earth's escape velocity. These rocks excited Earth's gravitational pull to either orbit the Sun, and some of this material probably reached the Moon. But the majority of ejected debris returned back to Earth within the hour. These glass-like chunks, called tektites, some as large as buses, but most the size of marbles, pelt the Earth at speeds ranging from 160 to 320 kilometers per hour in lethal quantities. Regardless of where any remaining dinosaurs were on Earth, they were hit with this fiery hailstorm. But these glass bullets didn't need to hit the dinosaurs to be fatal. As these tektites fall, their friction with the atmosphere emits enough thermal radiation to set fires across the planet. By some estimates, the combined heat of the returning embers heats the planet to the equivalent of an oven set to broil. Most of the world's trees burn, which is perhaps why the only bird species that survive the impact are those that nest on the ground. Of the few larger land animals to avoid extinction, nearly all have had some means of escaping the heat. They either could burrow like small mammals, snakes and lizards, or escape into water like crocodiles or turtles. Even if the poor dinosaurs were on the other side of the world, they would have needed to find protection from the initial heat blast. In a final piece of terrible luck for the dinosaurs, Chicxulub happens to strike an area rich in oil and sulfur. The impact ejects 100 billion tons of vaporized sulfur and 30,000 quadrillion gallons of water into the atmosphere, which then condenses into massive storm clouds and falls back as torrents of acid rain that acidified the oceans. In the higher latitudes, continental-wide snowstorms deposit tens of feet of snow per day. But the global deluge doesn't last long, because in addition to water, Chicxulub vaporizes and explosively ejects 150 football stadiums worth of oil from the Yucatan bedrock. This oil condenses in the stratosphere as a black sooty layer covering the Earth like a coat of black paint. Unlike the sulfur and wildfire smoke, the carbon circulates high above the cloud layer, stopping it from raining back down. And that becomes another big problem. The soot layer remains in the atmosphere, reducing the amount of sunlight that reaches Earth's surface by 90% for at least 2 to 3 years. The initial oven-like heat brought on by the returning tektites is followed by a deep and long-lasting freeze. Global temperatures drop by an average of almost 50 degrees. The only place on Earth to avoid this deep freeze are Madagascar, India, and Indonesia, which were tropical islands during this time. In the global chill, evaporation almost ceases, dropping rainfall by 80%. Nearly every spot on Earth outside of these tropical islands dries into a desert. Where did this giant rock come from? And is there another one out there headed for us? Researchers using a supercomputer studied asteroid evolution using data from known asteroids. The two-member team of Avi Loeb and Amir Siraj suggested that the Chicxulub asteroid likely originated from the Oort cloud, a sphere of debris at the edge of the solar system. It could have been a much larger comet that was pushed off course by Jupiter's gravitational field and sent close to the Sun, where it broke into several pieces. These fragments can cross the Earth's orbit and hit the planet once every 250 to 730 million years. Judging from this study, it's not a matter of if we could be hit by another giant rock from outer space, but when. On Saturday, December the 11th, 2021, NASA revealed that a 330-meter-long asteroid named 4660 Nereus screamed past Earth around 3.8 million kilometers at a speed of 6.5 kilometers per second. While you might not think this is very close, any slight deviation in its orbit could put it on a direct course with us and smash into the Earth in the future. Astronomers are tracking this potentially hazardous rock and say it'll come within 1.1 million kilometers of Earth on Valentine's Day in 2060. Buy your flowers and get those proposals done early just in case. Keep in mind, the asteroid that caused the Chelyabinsk explosion in Russia in 2013 was just 20 meters in size. The bad thing is that we don't have any known way to defend the Earth from a giant space rock. However, NASA's DART mission, or Double Asteroid Redirection Test, will try to see if a spacecraft can autonomously navigate to a target asteroid and intentionally collide with it, causing a kinetic impact that could push the asteroid off a collision course with the Earth. DART's target is Dimorphos, an asteroid moonlet which orbits a larger asteroid named Didymos. The spacecraft is set to arrive in late September 2022, when the Didymos system is 11 million kilometers from Earth. However, it's estimated that the collision will change the speed of the moonlet by a fraction of 1%. Stopping a 10-kilometer wide or bigger asteroid hurtling towards the planet at more than 72,000 kilometers per second will take a lot more than a small spacecraft impacting it. Perhaps the world would need to try nuclear weapons, like in the movie Armageddon. About 1 million years after the extinction of the dinosaurs, the Earth was a very different place from what it is today. During this time, known as the Paleogene period, the continents were still in the process of moving and changing shape. The planet was much warmer than it is now, with tropical forests spreading across the globe, and the sea levels were much higher. The earlier Paleogene was characterized by the proliferation of mammals, birds, and reptiles, many of which were quite different from the species we see today. The ecosystems of the time were also different, with different food webs and interactions between species, and began to evolve and adapt to the changing environments. With the huge dinosaurs now out of the way, mammals could exploit the planet's resources for themselves. Within a few million years of the asteroid impact, the fossil record shows an explosion in mammalian diversity. There is abundant fossil evidence for the evolution of shrew-like mammals called morganocodontids that evolved into the mammals that we see today. Some of the earliest known fossils of mammals are from the Jurassic period, around 165 million years ago, and include small, insect-eating animals similar in size and shape to modern-day shrews. One of these is a 200-million-year-old species named Megazostrodon, which measured about 10 to 12 centimeters long. It most likely ate insects and small reptiles, and was probably nocturnal because it had a larger brain, and the enlarged areas of its brain were discovered to be those that process sounds and smells. This evolutionary trait was likely to avoid being in competition with reptiles or becoming prey to the dinosaurs. It might be hard to believe, but all living mammals today, including us, descend from this one line that survived. In the oceans, the first animals to appear after the dinosaurs were ammonites, which were relatives to the modern-day nautilus. They were important predators in the ocean and helped to maintain balance in the marine ecosystem. In addition to mammals and ammonites, other early animals on Earth after the extinction of the dinosaurs included birds, reptiles, and fish. The early bird species were mostly small and similar in size to modern-day sparrows, while the reptiles of the time included turtles, lizards, and snakes. Fossil evidence shows that these early mammals changed in size and shape over time, as well as in their adaptations to specific habitats and food sources. For example, whales evolved from a terrestrial ancestor that lived around 50 to 52 million years ago and gradually became better adapted to life in the water until they became the fully aquatic whales that we know today. This animal is named Pakicetus, a four-legged creature about the size of a goat that scientists now recognize as one of the first whales. Although it had a body of a land animal, its head had the distinctive long skull shape of a whale's. Over time, these animals adapted to the water and they lost their limbs. Their nostrils shifted backwards and upwards, and forelimbs turned into flippers, and of course, they grew in size immensely. Fossils of Pakicetus have been discovered in the Tethys Sea region, which was a shallow sea that existed between the ancient continents of Gondwana and Laurasia. During the Miocene epoch, the oceans were home to a variety of marine animals, including many that are still present in the oceans today, such as dolphins, whales, sea lions, seals, sea turtles, and various types of fish. However, there were also many prehistoric marine animals that have since gone extinct. Megalodon, a giant prehistoric shark, is thought to have first appeared about 23 million years ago during the Miocene epoch. Megalodon was a top predator in the oceans, and it's estimated to have grown up to 108 meters in length, making it one of the largest known sharks to have ever existed. Some of the other prehistoric marine animals that were present in the oceans during the time the Megalodon was swimming around were creatures such as Basilosaurus, which was a large prehistoric whale that could grow longer than 15 meters in length and lived during the Eocene epoch and is one of the earliest known whales. There was another top predator in the oceans at that time, and it was something even bigger than Megalodon. We're talking about Leviathan, a prehistoric whale that lived around 8 to 12 million years ago during the Miocene epoch. This whale is estimated to have been about 13 meters long and had massive teeth, suggesting that it was a formidable predator. The Leviathan is a close relative of modern sperm whales. But there were more than just sharks and whales in the seas and oceans. Dunkleosteus was a massive prehistoric fish that lived during the Devonian period and was known for its huge size, powerful jaws, and bony armor. The infamous Mosasaurus that the Jurassic Park movies brought to life was a type of marine reptile that lived during the late Cretaceous period. The largest fossil specimen measured was a whopping 17 meters long. Mosasaurus had a long, streamlined body with 4 flippers and a powerful tail that allowed it to swim rapidly through water. Its skull was elongated and had numerous sharp, pointed teeth, which it used to catch fish and other prey. But despite its size and fearsome appearance, Mosasaurus was not a dinosaur, but a type of lizard, and is considered to be one of the largest and most successful marine reptiles to have ever lived. And then there was Archelon, a type of sea turtle that lived during the late Cretaceous period and was one of the largest known turtles to have ever existed. These are just a handful of the many creatures that evolved and adapted to aquatic life. But it was not just in the oceans that life diversified and exploded into many different species. There were many strange and bizarre-looking creatures that appeared on land as well. Creatures that lived on land, such as rodents, evolved from early shrew-like mammals and diversified into a variety of species, including mice, rats, squirrels, beavers, and many others. Carnivores also evolved from early shrew-like mammals and gave rise to cats, dogs, bears, and other predator species. Members of the cat family, Felidae, are believed to have evolved from a group of small, shrew-like mammals called miacids, which lived during the Paleocene epoch, approximately 66 to 56 million years ago. The miacids were a diverse group of carnivorous mammals that were adapted to hunting small prey. Modern-day mongooses can trace their origins to miacids. Over time, some miacid species evolved specialized features that made them more efficient hunters, such as retractable claws and more powerful jaws. One of these specialized miacids, called Proalirus, is considered to be one of the earliest known cat-like animals. Proalirus lived during the Oligocene epoch, around 30 million years ago, and had several features that are characteristic of modern cats, including retractable claws and a more powerful bite. Proalirus evolved and diversified, eventually giving rise to various lineages of cats with different anatomical features, including the saber-toothed cats. One of the most well-known groups of saber-toothed cats is the Smilodontidae tribe, which included Smilodon and Homotherium. These cats were well known by their long, saber-like canine teeth, which were used for hunting and possibly for defense against predators. The earliest known members of the dog family, Canidae, are believed to have appeared during the Eocene epoch around 56 to 33.9 million years ago. One of the earliest known Canidaes is a small fox-like animal called Hesperocyon, which lived in what is now North America around 40 million years ago. Hesperocyon is believed to be the ancestor of all modern canids, including dogs, wolves, foxes, and coyotes. But there were other predators aside from the prehistoric cats and dogs roaming the plains. Terror birds, known as forest russids, are a group of large flightless predatory birds that were native to the Americas approximately 2 million years after the extinction of the dinosaurs. The exact timing of the appearance of the terror birds is not well established, but it's believed to have been in the late Paleocene or early Eocene, about 62 to 58 million years ago. Titanis walleri was one of the last and largest species of terror bird. These birds dominated the continent for millions of years before going extinct around 1.8 million years ago, possibly due to climate change and competition from other predators. Titanis was likely a carnivorous bird that fed on a variety of prey that may have included other birds, mammals, reptiles, and possibly even large insects and invertebrates. Fossils of Titanis have been found in various locations in North and South America, and some of the bones show signs of carnivorous feeding, including tooth marks and damage caused by digestion. It's interesting to note that while some modern birds are descendants of dinosaurs, the forest russids are not. They are a separate and distinct group of birds that evolved independently from dinosaurs and belong to a group of flightless birds known as Paleognathi, which also includes the modern ostrich, emu, kiwi, and the cassowary, which is the deadliest bird in the world. But terror birds weren't the only interesting and bizarre creatures to appear. Several species of prehistoric sloths evolved and lived during the Cenozoic era, which spans from about 66 million years ago to the present day. Ground sloths were the size of huge bears that lived from the Oligocene epoch to the Pleistocene epoch, which spanned from about 33.9 million years ago to 11,700 years ago. They were quadrupedal and had large claws that were likely used for defense and digging. Tree sloths lived from the Oligocene epoch to the present day. They were arboreal and had long limbs and curved claws that allowed them to move easily through the trees. Today, the only surviving species of tree sloth is the two-toed sloth and three-toed sloth. But where are the snakes, you might be asking? The evolutionary history of snakes is complex and not fully understood, but scientific evidence suggests that snakes evolved from a group of small, lizard-like ancestors called stem squamates that lived more than 100 million years ago during the time of the dinosaurs. These early stem squamates were likely small, insect-eating creatures that lived on the forest floor, much like the early shrew-like creatures. Over time, some of these stem squamates evolved, becoming more elongated and legless. The earliest known fossils of snakes, such as Eophis underwoodi, date back to around 95 million years ago and show features that are similar to those of modern snakes, such as the presence of a flexible skull and a long, slender body. Titanoboa would evolve from a small group of boas and is considered to be the largest snake ever discovered, with the largest known specimens estimated to have reached lengths of up to 12.8 meters long and weighed up to 1,135 kilograms. So, while snakes did not evolve directly from tiny shrew-like creatures, they did evolve from small, lizard-like ancestors during the time of the dinosaurs and have since evolved to become the diverse group of animals that we know today. And finally, we come to our own ancestors. Fossil evidence shows that early primates had small bodies, long tails, and grasping hands and feet, adaptations that would have been useful for climbing and foraging for food in trees. Over time, primates evolved into the diverse groups of primates that we have today, including monkeys, apes, and humans. But there's so much more to cover about our own species, and we'd need more time. So if you want to see that in another video, let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, show us some support with a like, We appreciate it, and make sure to subscribe to stay tuned here for more videos in the series. Thanks for watching.